welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book The Conversion of a Miser, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. Gil Gomez was a man of 52, heavy-set, red-faced and greedy. He ran a mattress shop on one of the streets in the Cajueros neighborhood. His wealth had grown steadily over the years, earned by selling mattresses and never buying one for himself. Let that sink in. He made a fortune off beds, but slept on a straw couch so old it creaked with every move. He wasn't dirty or unkempt, mind you. He wore clean shirts, clean pants, and a clean coat. But that was all he ever bought. His furniture? 2 chairs, 1 broken, a pine table, and an old wooden chest. That was his life. His shop was modest, neither big nor small, but always full of goods. He had 2 workers helping him, and that was enough. He had been in the mattress business since 1827. This story begins in 1849, when something unexpected happened. Gil Gomez got sick. A friend of his, who lived in Enginho Velho, offered to take him in. The friend said it was for health reasons, claiming that the city air wouldn't help him recover. Gil didn't want to hear it at first. No, he said the first time his friend brought it up. This is nothing. Maybe it is nothing, the friend replied, but it could get worse. Nonsense. Just a little fever. He'll have some tea and be fine. But this wasn't a tea kind of illness. Still, Gil avoided doctors and medicine like the plague. He hated spending money, even when he had to. His friend insisted, promising not to charge him anything for his care. Gil was surprised, even touched, by what he saw as a noble act of friendship. He didn't say yes, and he didn't say numero, he just shrugged and looked away. "Come on," the friend urged. "Let's go." "All right," Gil finally said. "Maybe what I need most is good company." "Exactly," the friend said. "And don't think about the cost." Gil nodded. "Because I'm not that sick. Just a little fever." "Little fevers can turn into big ones," the friend replied wisely. This friend's name was Portuguese. He was a man who had survived many failures. He had tried many jobs, many paths, and now he was chasing one last dream: to become a millionaire. Gil Gomez was sick, but not seriously. His friend Jose Borges took him in, offering a small room that, while modest, was clean and tidy. Gomez lay in bed, feeling better each day, watching the world outside the window and listening to the chaos inside the house. Borges wasn't a rich man, not by any stretch. He owned 2 recently bought slaves, both new to the country, and still confused by its language and customs. That was all he had. His wife, Dona Ana, was sharp-tongued and cruel, the kind of woman who could turn a simple question into a shouting match. Their daughter Mafalda wasn't much better. She was odd, superstitious, and seemed to live in her own strange world. She barely spoke and only caught a certain dramatic flair, as if every sentence were part of a play. Still, Borges believed in the future. He worked small jobs selling this, fixing thatan between tasks. He would sit quietly, scribbling notes in a worn notebook. He claimed to be working on an invention, something that would change the world. No one knew what it was. No one even asked anymore. But Borges swore it would make him rich beyond imagination. Gomes, though grateful, couldn't help but feel a quiet pity for his friend. The room was simple, almost bare, and yet Borges had made sure it was ready. What a waste, Gomes thought. Why spend so much time and effort on me? He looked around, shaking his head. This man will never amount to anything. But Gomes was wrong. Borges didn't care about waste. He cared about loyalty. He wanted to show his friend that he mattered, that he was not alone. And so, despite his own struggles, he gave what he could: food, shelter, kindness. Donna Ana, for all her noise and temper, tried in her own way to be kind. She woke each morning at 5 and shouted until 10 at night. During Gomes' illness, she held back her usual outbursts, though her silence was not peace. It was tension. The anger she didn't throw at Gomes, she threw at her daughter, her husband, or the slaves. Mafalda, for her part, tried not to be noticed. She woke late, dressed slowly, and never wore socks before lunch. She combed her hair precisely at 2 o'clock each afternoon, no matter what was happening around her. She spoke little, and mostly to herself, whispering prayers or warnings to unseen spirits. Despite the noise, the mess, and the strange habits, Gomes recovered quickly. By the 4th day, he was walking around the house, stretching his legs and asking questions. Borges watched him closely. "Are you feeling better?" he asked. "I'm not bad," Gomes replied. "Not bad? That's not an answer. Are you better or not?" "I'm fine, really. And I know I've been a bother." "No, numero, don't say that." "But it's true. A sick man is always a burden." "No," Borges said firmly. "You're not a burden. Never think that." Gil Gomes had just started to feel better when his friend Jose Borges made a joke about his recovery. Jose, always quick with words, suggested that Gil might never go back to his mattress shop that had grown too comfortable in Rio. Gil didn't like the comment. He stood up straight and gave a long talk about the true meaning of friendship, something he clearly felt Jose was missing. Jose listened, but not with much interest. He seemed bored, even a little annoyed. The next day, before Gil was set to return to work, he met someone new in Jose's family, the widow Soares. She was Jose's cousin and had just turned 27. According to Jose, she was a real woman, and he said it with pride, like he had made her himself. And in truth, she was quite striking. Strong, tall, with wide shoulders and round, full arms. She had been a widow since she was 22, but still wore some black clothes, not so much out of sadness, but because it looked good on her. She liked to wear a veil, and it wasn't hard to see why. A young poet once told her, in very bad verses, that her eyes looked like stars behind thin clouds. Rufina, her full name, thought that was clever and modern. As a reward, she gave the poet one long look, and that was all. Her eyes really were beautiful, big, dark, full of mystery. When Gil saw them, he was stunned. Maybe it was exactly what he needed to feel better. "Your cousin," Gil said to Jose, "she really is something. She's a real woman, Jose said again. A real woman? She's more than one. She's two. Maybe 35. You're really taken by her, Jose said, smiling. I appreciate beauty, Gil replied, as if it were a deep thought. Rufina was getting ready for dinner. That meant a long evening of talking, laughter, and easy company. Gil felt grateful for his illness. Now it had brought him to this moment. At the table, Rufina was charming. She spoke easily and seemed to like Gil right away. No one else seemed to notice, but it was clear. She smiled at him, asked how he felt, and laughed at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. But are you really all better now? She asked him. I was almost better, he said, looking at her with a soft smile. Now I'm completely healed. She pretended not to notice his look. My cousin is a good man, she said. You're lucky to have him. Gil Gomez could hardly believe his luck. Oh, she's a gem, he thought. His illness had been minor, nothing serious, but Dr. Fernandez had insisted. Had gone to Gil's house, begged him, pushed him to come stay at his place for treatment, saying that family care was essential. And Gil had come. He thanked his stars every day for it. Now he was healthy again, stronger than ever. That night, dinner was wonderful, and the evening even better. Gil felt like he was floating in Havana, not just one heaven, but all the heavens, real and imagined. He tried to stretch the night as long as he could. To keep everyone together, he suggested a game of four-handed euchre, and somehow managed to pair with Rufina, just so he could wink at her whenever he held the right card, the 7 or the ace. It got even more exciting. At one point, during a difficult hand, Rufina hesitated over whether to take the trick with a trump card. Gil noticed she wasn't looking up, so he couldn't wink at her as usual. Desperate to guide her, he gently tapped her foot with his under the table. Rufina didn't pull her foot away. She understood. She played her card, and their feet stayed close for a few quiet seconds. Suddenly, as if realizing only then what had happened, the widow pulled her foot back and grew very serious. Gil looked at her, embarrassed, but she didn't meet his eyes. Later, though after about an hour, when they were saying goodbye, Rufina made peace with the mattress maker by squeezing his hand tightly. The touch made him shiver from head to toe. That night was torture for Gil. Or maybe it was the sweetest torture. He dreamed of the widow from beginning to end. The first dream was beautiful. He imagined walking with her and her whole family through a garden. She gave him flowers, smiled at him, even playfully pinched his arm. But the second dream was dark. He dreamed she stabbed him with a knife. From that nightmare, his mind drifted into better, softer dreams. The night passed in a swirl of different fantasies. But the last dream was both the best and the worst. He dreamed they were married. And when he woke, the beauty of that dream made the truth of his lonely life feel even harsher. Gil Gomez had begun to think seriously about celibacy. It wasn't new to him, had lived that way for many years. But now it felt different. He asked himself, and even the sky and the earth, if he had the right not to marry. The answer came before lunch. No, he told himself. I must never marry. That was just a passing thought. Let the devil take the widow and all the rest. Why should I waste my hard-earned money on a woman who'll spend it all in no time? He ate lunch in peace, and then said goodbye to his hosts, thanking them warmly. Now don't forget our address, now that you're all better, said Jose Borges' daughter. Her father turned red, almost to his eyes, while her mother punished the girl's boldness with a hard pinch that made her see stars. Get in here, the good lady snapped. Gil Gomez pretended not to hear or see anything. He shook his friends' hands, promised them eternal gratitude, and left. To say he never thought of the widow Rufina again would be a lie. He did think of her, but he tried to fight it. The struggle lasted a week. By the end of it, he almost went past her house just to see it, but he stopped himself. He was ashamed. No, I must forget her. 15 days after meeting the widow, Gil seemed to have truly forgotten her. Several things helped him. The most important was the case of his nephew. The boy worked as hard as he could, day after day, until one night he was taken by force on Rua dos Ciganos. Gil didn't love anyone, not in this world or the next. But he owed something to the memory of his brother, the boy's father. And at the very least for appearances, he couldn't refuse to go see the boy when he heard the news. Let justice be done. He tried for 2 full days to get his nephew out of the army. He couldn't. The only other option was to find a replacement. And when the boy saw no hope left, he suggested that last solution himself. Gil Gomez stared at the young man with such coldness that it sent a chill through his veins. That look seemed to say, "A replacement? Money? Do I look like a reckless spender? Do you really think I would just open my purse and throw away what I worked so hard to earn? Wicked soul. Who filled your head with such a terrible idea?" Then came another blow. The only man who owed him money had died, leaving behind a debt of 600 mil rey plus interest. The news hit Gil so hard that he skipped dinner entirely. He asked himself, is it allowed for a debtor to die without paying what he owes? Are the heavens so cruel as to take a sinner's life, but leave his debts behind? This second pain was as great as the first, though it should have been worse. But Gil Gomez had, over time and through small gains, already recovered most of what he was owed. That thought brought him some comfort, and made his supper that night a little easier to swallow. So, for now at least, Donna Rufina was not forgotten, but sleeping quietly in his memory. Then one evening, he received a small note from the wife of Jose Borges. She invited him to join them for dinner the next Saturday, the birthday of their daughter. The letter had been delivered by Jose himself. "Can we count on you?" Jose asked as soon as he saw Gil finish reading the note. "I don't know, maybe." No maybes, not even half a maybe. This is a quiet, family dinner, only relatives, 2 friends, and you are one of them. The only women will be those from our house. Comadre Miklenihu is Mafalda's godmother and my cousin Rufina. Do you know her? Your cousin? Of course I do, Gil replied, his eyes flashing. Don't you remember that she stayed the last night I was at your house? We even played cards together. Oh, right. I had forgotten. She's a fine lady. Oh, she's a true gem, Jose said. Wait a moment. Now I remember that she, just a few days ago, went there and spoke about you. She asked how you were doing. She is a real lady. She seemed like one. Let's get to the point. Can we count on you? Gil Gomez had already given in deep inside. He wanted to say yes, but in a way that wouldn't seem strange. He raised his eyebrows slightly, pinched the tip of his nose, looked at the letter, and muttered, "Well, maybe." "No, not maybe. It must be certain." "You're a devil." "Fine, I'll go." Jose Borges shook his hand firmly, sat down, and told him 2 short stories. Meanwhile, the mattress maker suddenly began to suspect that the widow's cousin might ask him for money. So he started to pretend he was falling asleep. Jose Borges left and went straight to the house to bring the news that Gil Gomez would attend the party. He arrived like a miracle, stopping a storm of scolding that the mother had been pouring over her daughter for one of her many little mistakes. Donna Ana did not smile right away, but her face softened. She listened, spat out 6 or 7 cruel adjectives, and finally fell silent. Jose Borges, who always took his wife's side as a matter of caution, told his daughter in a serious tone to leave the room. In doing so, he served both mother and daughter at once. "So, Hes coming?" said Donna Ana when the storm began to pass. "He's coming, and that's all there is to it." "Are you sure?" "I believe so." On the appointed day, the invited guests arrived at Jose Borges' house, the family members, the godmother, and the 2 friends. Among the relatives was a cousin pale, tall, and thin who had fallen in love with Mafalda. Her father approved of him. This cousin owned 3 buildings. Mafalda often said she cared for him very much. And if eyes were truly mirrors of the heart, then the girl's heart melted for her cousin, for her eyes were like 2 snowballs touched by sunlight. Ignacio arrived early that afternoon, 2 hours before the other guests, hoping to find the right moment to speak with his uncle. In her heart, Clara knew he was as shy as a boy in a school play, but she had given him permission to ask for her hand that very day. Still, words failed him. He tried 3 times to bring it up. Each time, the words vanished before they could leave his mouth. His uncle's serious face, his aunt's sharp eyes, and even Clara's own cold manner made him tremble. Ignacio wasn't bold by nature. He felt like a child again, lost in a house full of grown-ups. The guests began to arrive, and still, he said nothing. Clara gave him a cold look for his silence, but only for a moment. Then came a small, encouraging one. She understood. A suitor, even one like Ignacio, needed time. She would get her revenge later, after the wedding, when she could remind him of this moment. At 4:30, Mr. Gil Gomez arrived. When he stepped through the door, Jose Borges rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Was it really him? Could it be true that the mattress maker had walked into his living room? Where? When? How? Under what strange stars had Gil Gomez ever worn gloves before? He wore a pair nowis. They were woolen, thick and plain, but gloves nonetheless. In his own view, they were useless. Still, he had bought them. That was the only real expense he made that day, and he did it only because he knew it mattered. Jose Borges held on to a quiet hope for 15 minutes, that Gil had brought a gift for his daughter. It was her birthday, after all. But hope faded quickly. Gil was not a man of tradition. He did not believe in birthday gifts. He was, in that sense, a rebel. A few minutes after Gil arrived, the widow Soares entered the room. She had been in the house since 2 o'clock, waiting. Gil had heard her coming even before she appeared. Her dress rustled down the hall, and her heavy steps made his heart pound. He knew that sound. There was no mistaking it. It could only be her. Rufina walked in with quiet dignity. Whether by chance or on purpose, the first eyes she met were his. 5 minutes later, she leaned toward the mattress maker and whispered, "I haven't seen him again since that night." "That's true," Gil Gomez agreed, not really knowing what else to say. Rufina leaned back in her chair, gently fanning herself. She turned slightly toward him, and he answered, his voice trembling without meaning to. Soon enough, the host invited everyone to move into the dining room. Gil Gomez stood up, hoping to offer his arm to the widow. Jose Borges made it easy for him. "Come on, what are you waiting for? Offer your arm to your cousin," Jose said. "Ignacio, you take Mafalda. I'll take the godmother." "Okay. And you, Aninha?" "I'm going with Mr. Pantaleon," Aninha replied. Mr. Pantaleon was one of the 2 friends Jose Borges had invited, along with family. He wasn't worth much mention, just a quiet man, with no other remarkable trait. At the table, Gil Gomez sat right next to Rufina. He felt stunned, happy, and completely overwhelmed. It was as if an invisible spirit were throwing sparks into his eyes and pouring a special, almost heavenly liquid through his veins. The widow truly looked more beautiful than ever, fresh, calm, and elegant. He could feel her dress brushing against his pants. He saw her eyes lock into his, and he couldn't tell if this was dinner or a dream. Jose Borges did his best to keep the table lively, and the family and the godmother joined in. Of the 2 guests, the mattress maker belonged to the widow, and the quiet one belonged entirely to his own stomach. Jose had prepared a suckling pig and a turkey, the 2 best dishes of the night, as he had proudly announced earlier. Then came the toasts. They toasted to Mafalda, to Dona Ana and Jose Borges, to the godmother, and to the widow. Jose raised the toast to Rufina with great enthusiasm, and everyone responded with equal excitement. Between Rufina and Gil Gomez, there was a private toast, their glasses gently tapping together. Gil Gomez, even with the soft change happening inside him, ate like a king. A good dinner was rare for him, something he only got once in a while. So he didn't miss this chance. The dinner, the wine, the talk, the happy mood, the widow's eyes, maybe even the tip of her foot, all of it helped loosen his tongue. He laughed, he talked, he made jokes, he complimented the host, and he dropped every guard he had. For dessert, he insisted she eat a pear he had peeled himself. And the widow, to be kind, made him eat half of it too. "I accept," Gil said, almost shouting. The pear was peeled, then split by her hands, and they both ate it together, quietly, eyes lowered to their plates. Jose Borges, who had watched the whole thing, looked pleased with how things were going. He stood up to toast the married life. Gil cheered out loud. Rufina didn't even touch her glass. "Didn't you drink to your cousin's toast?" Gil asked. "No." "Why not?" "I couldn't," she sighed. "Oh." A silence followed. "But why, I mean, it's hot in here," Gil said, his words all over the place. These confused words didn't seem to reach the widow. She was staring at the edge of the table, deep in thought, as if looking at something far behind or far ahead. Gil started to feel uneasy. He couldn't figure out why she was quiet like that. He wondered if he had said something foolish. Suddenly, everyone stood up. The widow took his arm. Gil felt her touch and shivered from head to toe. "Why were you sad just now?" he asked. "Me?" "Yes." "Was I sad?" "Very much so." "I don't remember." "Maybe you were upset." "Why?" "I don't know. Maybe I said something wrong." "You?" "Yes, me." Gilgamesh watched Rufina walk away, his heart sinking with her every step. Her silence cut deeper than words ever could. He wanted to ask why, but something in her eyes warned him not to push. Rufina had always been strong-willed, but this time felt different, like a storm she refused to name. He sat alone, replaying the moment in his head. Never in his life had he felt such a strange mix of guilt and confusion. He thought about how he had given up cigars months ago to save money. But today, he made an exception. Jose Borges offered him one, and Gil accepted, hoping the smoke might clear his thoughts. It didn't help. All he could see was her face, her cold goodbye. From that day on, Rufina seemed to avoid him completely. He tried 3 times to talk, but she always slipped away before he could say much. Each time, his worry grew. What had he done? Or worse, had someone else won her heart? Gil felt like a man lost at sea, with no land in sight. He became quiet, moody, and barely noticed the time passing. When he finally looked at the clock, it was already 11. He jumped up in a panic. The shop had been left in the hands of the clerk for far too long. That was never a good idea. Something could have gone wrong, and it would be his fault. That thought made him even more upset. He needed to be alone. He left the others and went into a small room nearby. There, he found a music box on a shelf. He wound it up, and soft notes filled the air. He sat down, hoping the music would calm him. But just as he began to relax, he heard heavy footsteps. It was Rufina. She had come back to get her shawl. She was leaving again, and fast. "Are you going already?" he asked, trying to hide his disappointment. "Yes," she replied, without looking at him. "So soon?" She didn't answer. "Did I upset you somehow?" he asked gently. "Maybe," she said, still not meeting his eyes. "Why?" She took a deep breath, as if trying to decide whether to speak. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "Please, don't talk to me anymore. Don't look for me. Don't try to see me. Goodbye." And with that, she turned and walked out. Gil stood frozen, stunned by her words. He couldn't move at first. But after a moment, he ran after her, desperate to understand. He found her in the living room, hugging her cousin goodbye. He approached her, hoping to say something, anything that might fix what was broken. He called her name and tried to speak, but she didn't respond. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she simply shook hands with everyone, including him, and walked out the door. Gil Gomez felt a tightness in his chest when it was finally his turn. It wasn't a strong pain, not at all, but it meant everything. It was the kind of pressure that said more than any words ever could. He left the house half an hour later, shaken in a way he had never been before, not in all the years of his quiet, simple life. He didn't go straight home. The idea of sleeping felt impossible. Walking the streets, at least, saved him the cost of a candle. He walked for about 2 hours, lost in thoughts, chasing images in his mind, letting his imagination run wild with all sorts of dreams. The next day, at his usual time, he was back at the shop, but his mind was far away. He struggled to recognize the mattresses he sold every day. The noise of the city, the usual business, and lunch helped quiet the noise in his heart, just a little. That annoying voice inside him grew quiet, not out of kindness, but like a sly trick, to come back even stronger later. But it was already too late. Rufina had planted her flag deep in Gil Gomez's heart. He had to see her again. But how? He started thinking of ways to make that happen. Her tall, strong, round figure stood clearly in his mind, looking at him with her eyes saying, "Go see me. Come find me. Tell me how you feel." Luckily for him, the widow was turning 50 in 3 weeks. And guess what? He got an invitation. He jumped at the chance to visit the woman who filled his thoughts. The neighbors who knew how Gil Gomes lived such a quiet life began to talk. They noticed how often he had been going out and started making all sorts of guesses, the usual gossip from nosy people who love to imagine things. But what really got everyone talking was seeing him leave his house wearing a brand new overcoat for the birthday party. A new overcoat. That was like the end of the world. What can you say? The widow was worth any sacrifice, no matter how big. And this one? It was huge. Gil Gomez almost turned back 3 times before stepping into the tailor's shop. But each time he pushed himself to go in. If leaving his house meant he could erase her from his mind, maybe it would be worth it. Maybe. He had her right there in front of him. She was looking at him, smiling at him, tearing his soul apart, breaking his heart into pieces. He put on his jacket and felt handsome in it. He didn't care about the cost because all he could think about was being admired by the widow. This new meeting between Gil Gomes and Rufina was the moment they truly connected. So many kind gestures from him. So many meaningful glances from her. Both of them were moving fast, as if heading straight toward the blue sky, like 2 wandering stars drawn to each other. The mattress maker was completely overwhelmed. The widow seemed to be falling too. Jose Borges noticed this and encouraged it, pointing it out to both of them. "You two are thinking about something," he said one day when he caught them staring at each other. "Us," Rufina whispered. That us echoed deep inside Gil Gomes. The mattress maker paid the widow 2 or 3 visits when her family was also there. But one day, he went when no one else was around. Rufina sent word that she wasn't home. "Seriously?" Gil asked the maid. "Your mistress isn't here." "She said not to let you in, sir," the enslaved woman replied bluntly. Gil wanted to insist, but he knew it might be pointless. He left, heartbroken. That rejection felt like a sharp poke, and it only made him want her more. That night was terrible. The next day, Jose Borges showed up. "Can we talk in private?" he asked. "We can." They walked to the back of the shop and sat on 2 wooden chairs. Jose coughed, then paused, as if he were struggling or pretending to struggle to start the conversation. Finally, he broke the silence. "Did you go to my cousin's house yesterday?" "I did." "They told you she wasn't home?" "Yes." "By the maid." "The maid said more than that. She suggested that my cousin was actually there, but had told her to say you weren't welcome." "That's not true." "It is true." "But then why?" "I'll explain. Rufina knows you like her. And you should know that she likes you too. Everyone knows you two like each other." Gil Gomez stood up and paced the small room, walking 4 or 6 steps back and forth without really listening to the rest of what Jose Borges was saying. Jose, for his part, spoke to an empty room, the only one paying attention to his own words. After a few minutes, the mattress maker sat back down and looked at his friend. "So you're saying," Gil began, "that I like your cousin?" "That much is obvious," Jose replied. "And that she likes me too?" "Only a blind man wouldn't see it." "Does she even realize it herself?" "She sees it. She feels it." "Feels it?" Gil rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit. "And she likes me?" "Yes." "And you like her?" "I do," Gil admitted. "But do you think that makes me look ridiculous?" "Ridiculous? Now why would you say that? Come on, Gil. You're a good man. You've got real qualities. What's so strange about you liking someone like Rufina?" I guess it's not ridiculous." "Of course it's not." Jose leaned forward. "All I'm saying is, you must be careful. Very careful. Until the wedding day, at least." At the sound of that word wedding, Gil felt a chill run through him. He suddenly felt weak, as if his legs had turned to water. The idea of marriage had crossed his mind before, yes, but always in a foggy, unclear way. It had never felt real. But now, hearing Jose say it so plainly, so directly, made it feel like a hammer to the chest. Jose pretended not to notice his friend's shock and kept talking. He described the wedding as if it were already set in stone. He praised Rufina endlessly, her beauty, her virtues, her many suitors. And of all her virtues, he said, the greatest was her ability to save money. That, he repeated, was worth more than looks or charm. As for the suitors, there were plenty. At one point she had dozens. But lately, the numbers had dropped to only 5 or 6 serious ones. One of them, Jose added, was even a judge. An hour later, Jose stood up and said his goodbyes. Gil Gomez's situation was getting worse. Without even meaning to, he found himself on the edge of marriage, a huge expense that could shake the careful savings had worked so hard to build. A week passed after their last conversation, but nothing changed for him. If anything, things got harder. At the end of that week, he saw the widow again. Never had she seemed more beautiful to him. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, only a flower pinned to her chest, which she later pulled off and gave to him. Gil's love turned into something like a fever. He couldn't live without her anymore. He needed to see her, and when he did, he felt like falling at her feet. Rufina sighed, spoke softly, and looked at him with such sadness that poor Gil was completely under her spell. Another week passed, then another, and another. Love brought with it some expenses he'd never had before. Gil felt his greed loosening its grip, just a little. Or better said, he didn't feel anything at all because he couldn't feel pain or joy like others. Still, he began to open his purse more often. The idea of marriage stuck to him like a shadow. It was serious, like standing on the edge of a deep hole. Sometimes he felt scared. Other times, he closed his eyes and decided to jump into the dark. One day, Gil finally asked her properly, though very shyly. Rufina listened, covered her face with her hands, and said numero. "No," cried the stunned man. "No," she said firmly. Gil hadn't expected that answer. He begged, he pleaded, but the widow didn't seem willing to change her mind. "But why not?" he asked. "Don't you love me?" "Oh," she said, squeezing his hands. "Aren't you free?" "I am. I don't understand." "Please, explain." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the sofa, buried her face in her hands, and stayed like that for 5 minutes. Seen this way, she looked even more beautiful. She was half reclining, breathing fast, her hair a little out of place. "What's wrong?" he asked gently, a tenderness in his voice no one would have thought him capable of. Rufina looked at him, her eyes glistening like stars. "I love you, Gil. I love you deeply," she said. But then her voice dropped. "Still, I hesitate." He stepped closer. "Why? What is it that holds you back?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I fear marriage. That's all." He frowned. "Because of something someone said about me." "No," she said quickly. "It's not that. I fear what comes after marriage. I was so happy with my first husband, so deeply loved. I feel like the sky itself will punish me if I marry again. No woman has ever been loved the way I was. Oh, if you only knew the kind of love he gave me." Her voice cracked. "He lived only to make me happy. And now he's gone. To marry again feels like forgetting him." She covered her face with her hands. Gil stood there, heart pierced by her words. In that moment he swore to himself he would marry her, or the world would fall apart. The struggle lasted 3 full days. For 3 long, tiring days, Gil could think of nothing else. He didn't open his account books. He barely greeted customers. And in a moment of desperation, he even offered her a theater box. A theater box. It was unthinkable. A man like him, wasting money on luxury? That was the beginning of the end. But the battle didn't last longer than that. On the 4th day, she gave him her answer. A simple yes, written on fine embroidered paper. He read it, breathless. He kissed the note, then hurried to her house. She was waiting for him, nervous but hopeful. Their hands met. Then their lips. The deal was sealed. From that moment until the wedding day, Gil floated in a dream. He saw nothing clearly. He forgot how to count change. He walked the streets like a man lost in clouds. Once or twice, he almost turned back, as if some old instinct warned him. But those moments passed quickly. All he wanted was a quiet wedding, without fuss. But his friend Jose Borges disagreed. No, Jose said, slapping Jill's shoulder. Everyone must see how lucky you are. Everyone must envy you. On the street, people would whisper, "Look at that man. What a lucky fellow. What a wedding. So rich, so happy." Rich, yes, Gil muttered, falling into an old habit of speech. Jose laughed, patted his friend again, and refused to hear another word. Gil Gomez never would have gone through with it if not for his cousin's vote. The widow had made it clear. She wanted a big, flashy wedding. And the mattress seller didn't want anything else. "Fine," he said. "Carriages, right?" "Exactly," she replied. "White horses, fancy harnesses, drivers in uniform, something beautiful." "More beautiful than you?" "Impossible," Gil said, giving her a sweet, flirtatious look. She kissed him again, and for a moment, he saw stars in the middle of the day. It was settled. The wedding would be extravagant. Gil Gomez knew it would cost a fortune. In his heart, he thought it was pointless. But once she had made up her mind, there was no room for argument. He ordered new clothes for himself. He even had to buy everything from scratch, since he owned nothing decent. He got rid of 2 old coats and 3 pairs of pants that were 4 years old. He got a new house. The widow helped him with this big task. She told him what to buy. She picked out the furniture, the rugs, the vases, the curtains, the glassware, and the porcelain. The bills came in, large and terrifying, but Gil paid them without a second thought. On the eve of the wedding, he had become someone completely different, detached from the world and lost in his dream. Jose Borges took advantage of this love-induced trance to ask Gil for a loan of 200 mil rey. And get this, she said yes. It was like the end of the world. Gil lent the money with no guarantee, no written contract. That act, and the fall of Napoleon, are the 2 most shocking events of the century. The next day, they got married. The whole neighborhood had heard about it, but no one could believe it. They thought it was just gossip, even though all the busybodies had been spreading the news from shop to shop. But yes, he married. And even the people who saw him step into the carriage still wonder today if they were dreaming. Once married, there was no turning back. The Rubicon had been crossed. His new wife filled his life completely. She took over the space in his heart that had once belonged to money, especially British pounds. Gil Gomez had changed. He had been a caterpillar. Now he was a butterfly. He was like a butterfly, now fragile, aimless, fluttering without direction. The quiet, lonely life of his mattress shop felt like a distant memory, something he now regretted deeply. He even laughed at himself for how simple his world used to be. Back then, all he needed was work, routine, and peace. But now, only a woman could fill his days. No, not just any woman like her, Rufina. She was his dream, his obsession. He became the perfect husband, or so he believed. Rufina, though, loved luxury. She craved the noise of city life, the sparkle of theater lights, the buzz of expensive dinners, and the shine of diamonds around her neck. Gil, who once hated all that, slowly changed. He gave in to her desires, followed her wherever she led. From time to time, he'd feel a quiet fear inside. "Gil," he would say to himself, almost shouting, "where are you going? What kind of future are you chasing with all this waste?" But then she'd smile at him, or gently touch his arm, and all his doubts would vanish. He'd fall back into the rhythm of this new life, like a man swept away by a current. Only a year after their wedding, Gil had learned to play cards like a city gentleman. He even had a seat reserved at the theater. He bought a carriage, hosted dinners every Friday, and lent money to his friend José Borges every few months. Strange thing was, José Borges never paid him back. Year after year, Gil only grew more in love. He was like a small, loyal dog, always by her side next to her, watching her, thinking of her. He didn't know how to be anywhere else or feel anything else. His wallet grew thinner, but he grew fatter. In later years, he sold the carriage, stopped the dinners and the theater trips, and lent less money to José Borges. He played simpler card games for smaller stakes. And when poverty finally knocked at his door, Rufina left this world for good. Gil, who no longer owned a mattress shop, ended his days working as a clerk in a no-terrace office, tired and alone.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.